Hello, I'm Paul Adler with KY3, and today we're going to be talking about anxiety with Generation Z. Jennifer Baker, you know her from KY3. I've done a number of segments with her, and we're going to talk with her about this topic today. And before we dive into this topic, Dr. Jennifer Baker, I want you to talk about your background. So if people haven't seen these segments on KY3, or if they've never heard the full background on you, this is really a forum where we can do that. So tell me a little bit about how you became interested in your field of study.
Well, first of all, I earned my bachelor's degree in education, and my very first teaching job was teaching in a high school in Detroit, Michigan. And then because I had also dual certification for elementary school, I taught second grade in Southern Illinois. So that was my initial background, is in education and working with children. And I thought maybe I could help children more if I could work with their families. So I went back to school and earned my master's degree at Northern Illinois University with a specialization in marriage and family therapy. And then later on, I earned my doctorate in clinical psychology. And during that time, I had what more or less was a fellowship where I was overseeing the marriage and family therapy program at Forest Institute here in Springfield, Missouri, while I was also earning my doctorate in clinical psychology.
And at some point, the Forest Institute more or less went away.
Yes.
And you decided to start a new organization here in Springfield, Good Dads.
Yeah.
Tell me, how did you get interested in starting that? Why did you think there was a need for a group called Good Dads?
Well, I could see that if we could get dad in the door, that we could actually accomplish so much more with the family. I also could see that almost all the efforts in our community were focused on women and children, and certainly there was a need for that, but there were no efforts focused on fathers. I remember one grant award ceremony I went to, and I was counting the number of times the word baby, children, mother, or woman was used, and I was listening for the word dad or father, and I never heard it. So in an hour and a half presentation, nothing on dads. So I thought if we could do something to help dads, I felt like we could help the whole family. I also saw no efforts being focused there. So when the Forest Institute closed, and I was the director of the Murney Clinic at that time, I decided that I would turn my full attention to starting Good Dads and also seeing clients as a therapist.
So you do see clients on a regular basis, and I wanted to talk to you today about this younger generation. And this is based on a study that just came out, a researcher from San Diego State University.
Mm-hmm.
And that researcher has been studying Gen Z. And before we get into that research, what have you seen here at a local level when it comes to anxiety among this younger upcoming generation?
Well, actually, I've been seeing quite a lot of anxious young people that are college students. Sometimes I see anxious young people who are younger than that. I think there are just not enough mental health resources to go around. Sometimes I get a call from a parent of a college student who says, I really need my young person to see a therapist. So that's not uncommon. The last 2 or 3 years, even before COVID, I was getting calls from parents about their 18, 19, 20-year-old who is not adjusting well to a university setting. And so at a time when we think that people are excited to be away from home and they're starting their life and they're making new friends, what I found were, and what I'm seeing, are quite a lot of anxious young people. So when I saw this study by Jean Twenge, it really captured my attention because it describes what I've been seeing.
Yeah, and I listened to her talk about this and her research on Gen Z, and she talked about a number of things. She documented changes that started happening in her research, and I'll put a link online, or at least on my Facebook page, so people can look at this themselves. She talked about noticing this change really starting about 2012.
Mm-hmm.
And is that when you started to see a change in your practice too?
Probably not as much because I was not actively seeing as many clients at that time, but I would definitely say over the last 4 or 5 years, I definitely have seen that. Parents coming and bringing their kids into therapy, which she kind of actually alludes to, that Gen Z is the most protected generation of young people, and she attributes some of that to their anxiety and depression. In other words, parents have protected them a lot, and in doing so, they meant the very best for their children, but they set their children up to be more anxious and depressed and less prepared to enter the adult world than any generation beforehand.
Let's explore that a little bit. Protected. When I was growing up, I know that we would play baseball at first till we broke some windows, and then we were restricted to wiffle ball. Yeah, yeah. So and I had to pay for the windows. Then we played football, and we played street hockey with rollerblades. And I don't remember my parents coming out. I believe my parents are good parents. I'll say that up front. But I don't remember them coming out and saying every 5 minutes, how's it going, or checking on us. And I know that my generation of parents, it was the backyard. Where are you? And we wanted to know. So is that what we're talking about when we talk about protected, or are we talking about something bigger than just go play?
Well, I mean, protection is one of them. I mean, children used to go to school all the time without a cell phone stuck to them. And somehow they got themselves home, or they found a way to get to a phone, or they found a way to communicate with their parents. And now you have kids in college who call their parents every single day, maybe several times a day. They're in constant communication. They're texting their parents, and their parents are texting back. But that also is happening in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So the idea that you're not safe if you don't have a cell phone. In fact, I even hear parents say, well, I want them to have a cell phone, so just in case anything happened, they'd be able to get in touch with me. And it's amazing how that shift has taken place, when I'm sure you did not grow up with a cell phone. I did not. And today, children are more fearful than they ever were. And of course, fear contributes to anxiety. And we're maybe unintentionally giving them the message that if they don't have certain things or certain protection, then terrible things could happen to them. And in the same way, children don't, you mentioned playing with friends in playing with friends in the street, getting together, doing fun things. Children don't do that anymore. They have play dates. Parents arrange for them to meet with certain people that they then have dates they play together with, in an environment where usually parents are supervising their play and their activities, and then they take them home. Or many children don't walk to school anymore. Some of them do, but I know my son and daughter-in-law, when they were living in Austin, Texas, they lived 3 blocks from the school, just 3 blocks. You could just walk almost to the end of the yard and almost see the school. And yet many, many parents on that street walk down to the school to get their child and walk them home. Even though there was a crossing guard there, the thought that your 8 or 9-year-old could not walk 3 blocks all by themselves because it might be dangerous. I'm just saying that did not happen 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Parents were just not that vigilant. So unintentionally, when you get an anxious parent, you also then many times inspire anxiety in a child.
I want to jump back to the smartphone real quick, and one of the things I was thinking about is it's incredibly useful. I mean, when we had a calculator in school, kind of to date myself, that was a great machine.
Yes.
And now that's like a almost forgotten tool that's on the phone. I mean, you can use it for a camera. You can use it as the calculator. You can use it for directions if you're driving. You can just say, okay, fill in the name. I don't want to make it go off. Tell me the directions to this address. So there's a lot of use to it.
Yeah.
So because it has that use, and because it does give parents the ability to text or call their children at any point, you know, it has its value. So how, as a parent, how do you make sure that this tool is used correctly, I guess is the way to put it. What advice would you give parents if you have a really anxious younger person, college age or younger, and certainly in college you're not going to be able to restrict their smartphone use, but younger than that, what do you do? Because it is a useful tool.
Well, and I agree with you. It's a useful tool. It can be very, very helpful. But one of the things I say to parents regularly is have your child, you need to have a kind of telephone free zone, and you also need to have a phone garage. So such that if your child goes to bed at, let's say 9 o'clock, then the phone goes in the phone garage by 8 o'clock or whatever time you deem useful. Do not allow your child to take the phone to bed with them, because that causes all kinds of sleep problems, and kids are up at 2 or 3 in the morning. They're playing games on their phone. They're getting text messages from their friends on the phone, or just the alerts on the phone are waking them up. So we have a lot of very sleep deprived young people, and sleep deprivation very, very much contributes to depression. I don't even leave my phone I know I could set the alarm on my phone and it could wake me up, but I do not leave my phone in the bedroom, in the same room where I'm sleeping. I always ask people to get an alarm clock and put the phone in another room. The other thing is, looking at the screen a lot, especially an hour before bed, just kind of revs up one's melatonin levels, and it makes it more difficult to sleep. So that's why you could read a book. You can even sit in a room with low light and watch television from across the room, but nothing does as much to kind of rev you up as to checking out everything that's on your iPhone within the last hour before you go to sleep at night.
So if you have that phone garage,
yes,
what do you do when you get the pushback? Let's give parents some strategies, because hey, there's going to be push. I need my phone. Yeah.
I just say, that's maybe so, but you are the parent after all. And if you are in charge of your child's happiness and success to a certain degree, then you get to make the rules. And so I will be giving you a phone, and you can have this phone maybe when you're 12 or 13 or whatever, but just for you to know ahead of time, the phone goes in the phone garage at maybe during meal times or whatever you designate. I heard of one strategy that parents said, you can talk on the phone to your friends as long as it's connected to the kind of like power source. So in other words, much like when, I'm going to guess you and I were teenagers, you're much younger than me, of course, but you had to be connected to a phone. You couldn't wander around all over the house or outdoors. And so there was always the potential. Your parent knew when you were on the phone. You might have had more than one phone in the house, but your parents still knew when you were on the phone.
Today, some of us bought a 50-foot cord.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would just say, parents, please have the confidence to set some limits with your kids. It's the very nature of being an adolescent that it's hard to set limits on oneself sometimes. So parents need to help a teen by setting limits on when and how they will use the phone. And don't be afraid to take it away if you need to. Yeah.
Well, I want to double back too to play dates, because when I had my kids and they were younger, we did set up play dates, and that was not something that I had as a kid. We were just tossed outside. Is this something you're saying we need to go away from, the play date, more or less?
I'm not saying we need to go away from that. I'm just saying that we need to allow our child a little less structure in terms of structuring all their activities, making sure that they have a schedule that they follow every day. children need some downtime, time to be creative, read a book, do something on their own. I realize that getting them in a play date may make life easier for you because you don't have to be supervising them the entire time. But I'm a little concerned when we can't play with other children in the neighborhood and make that, something easy to happen. Unfortunately, if you're the only one with children outside, then, that might be a problem. But both of my kids live in neighborhoods now where the kids do get together and play, they ride bikes together or they play games in the street together. And I might say that's one thing that's come out of the pandemic that's maybe been kind of a nice thing, especially back in 2020 and that whole year. I heard children playing outside, playing together, having fun together in a way that I had not heard them doing for some time.
We've also heard a lot in the past couple of days about social media.
Yes.
And the impact of social media. Some of it we don't even realize, and a lot of it is focused on kids and potentially harmful impact on kids. And this is another one of those where it's very difficult to tell a 14 or 15-year-old, you're not going to be on Instagram. That is going to be one heck of a fight if you do that. So how can we empower parents, or what can we tell parents, some strategies to help with that, make sure that this isn't something that harms your child?
Well, first of all, start early. You need to be setting limits with your child. I don't know a child that's not fascinated with a phone, and you commonly see people in restaurants handing their phone with something on it to a very young child, like a 2-year-old or 3-year-old, because it keeps them fascinated for a while, keeps them quiet for a while. But once they start getting to use a phone of their own, then you need to make clear from the very beginning that there are limits, and you need to then remove the phone, whether they are unhappy or not. It's okay to make your child unhappy. That's part of your job sometimes as a parent, to set limits that your child will not like or agree with. We just do that. Then, you can say things like, I've heard parents say, I want to give my child a phone because I want to have something to take away when things don't go as they should. So that you can say, I will be happy to give you your phone back just as soon as, and as soon as could be you finish vacuuming the living room, just as soon as you bring your math score up to a B instead of a C or a D, just as soon as you can spend a half an hour playing with your younger sibling without a fight, just as soon as you can spend a half an hour reading, I'll be happy to give you your phone back as soon as you do that, and I feel treated with respect. So if your child has a bad habit of being sarcastic or nasty to you, you want to just kind of throw that freebie in. that there is something they want, that would be the phone. Also, parents set limits. They set, like, you get 1 hour screen time a day, or 2 hours of screen time a day, and then that's it. So that's another way that you can kind of influence your child's activity choices. Otherwise, some children, not all, but some will spend all day long just focused on that. And then they're kind of vicariously living life through Instagram and Facebook, and not really living their own life. I think it's also good to have active things for your kids to do. I know my granddaughters have a volleyball net set up in the backyard, and that's a place where they often gather. Now, you need to be the kind of house that you're okay with having other kids come in and play volleyball with your kids. My grandsons like to ride bicycles, and they spend a lot of time riding their bicycles. So provide active options for them, limit the amount of screen time they get, and then make sure that those phones, especially when they're younger, are under your control. Because if they don't learn to manage them well, then that can have some really negative effects on their mental health.
So 3 concrete things there that parents can use as strategies. And I'm going to ask one more question, then we're going to wrap it up for today, and I appreciate your time. And that is, your child is anxious, and you know as a parent that this is a problem, and we talked that there are shortages of enough people like you
Right.
out there to help. What do you do as a parent when you're told it's going to be 3 months before you can see somebody?
I think the first thing I would do is just check your own anxiety. You may be unintentionally stirring up your child's anxiety by being too worried about controlling every little thing.
Hmm.
So be thoughtful about that and think about the unintentional messages you might be sending to your child. But secondly, I would right away focus in on how much time they're spending on social media. What are the kinds of things that make them anxious, and what are the kind of things that make them more relaxed and seem happier? We know exercise really helps people. So get them outside. This is a beautiful time of year. There's rarely time in the Ozarks where you can't go out and, with the appropriate clothing, be okay outside. So being outside tends to reduce one's anxiety. Exercise reduces one's anxiety. Getting enough sleep really helps.
Jennifer Baker with Good Dads, Dr. Jennifer Baker, clinical psychologist. I thank you for joining us today. And
Welcome.
I hope we were able to help some of the people who were watching.
Me too.
All right. Thank you again.